Stop eating the moon. There we go. That's better. Hello, hello, hello. Just hanging out with the moon tonight. It's a lovely, crisp little view. Perfectly clear skies. Love that. This is a live view from Columbus, Ohio. Look at all that detail. Just love it. That bright crater up at the top with all the ejecta lines coming from it, that is Tycho crater, named after Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe was a famous astronomer from about the 15th century, 15th or 16th. And he was quite the interesting chap. He got into a fight with his cousin, and they were in a sword fight. He lost his nose during that sword fight, and for the rest of his days had a brass nose. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. So that one up at the top with all the ejecta lines coming straight from it, that is Tycho crater. Just below it, you'll see that darkened area. That is the Sea of Clouds. And just beside it, almost a circle, looks like it's got two legs. That is the Sea of Moisture. Now that darkened oval that's off to the lower left-hand side, that is the Sea of Crisis. Just above that is the Sea of Fertility, that second darkened area. The next one that is off to the right-hand side, that's a little bit darker and almost has a bluish tint to it, that is the Sea of Tranquility. That is where Apollo 11 landed. Stop yeeting the moon, woman. Just below the Sea of Tranquility is the Sea of Serenity, and it's just off to the right-hand side of the Sea of Tranquility. The next large sea that is coming into view on the right-hand lower side of the screen, that is the Sea of Rains. There's also a really long sea that's along the top part of our moon, and actually our view is flipped upside down and backwards. So what's at the bottom of your screen is actually the top part of the moon, and what's up at the top part of your screen is actually the southern pole, or the bottom side of the moon. So everything's kind of flipped upside down and backwards, and that is due to the type of telescope that I'm using, which is a Dobsonian 10. but that is the Sea of Rains. And then that really bright crater, kind of looks like a teardrop that's going sideways. That is Aristarchus crater. And just below Aristarchus crater is Schroeder's Valley. Just coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio tonight. It's a lovely clear view of our moon tonight. Up at the top, that is actually the bottom side of our moon. Everything's flipped upside down and backwards due to the type of telescope I'm using. But that brighter area, that is the Southern Highlands. And that really bright crater up at the top that looks like it's got a bunch of ejecta lines coming out from it, that is Tycho crater. All those ejecta lines that are coming out from it. Hi, V cells. How are you doing tonight? Our moon on the far side, the side that we don't see, actually looks a great deal like the Southern Highlands, which are at the top of your screen. And the reason why that is that there are more hills and valleys and just jagged areas along that. The darkened areas that you see, those are called seas. Back when they first started naming things, they thought that those were actual bodies of water. But now we know that those are lava basalt fields that have just cooled over time, and they're actually really, really flat, so they don't reflect as much light as what the highlands do. And the far side of the moon actually has a greater albedo, which means that it reflects more light than the near side of the moon. And that is because the near side of the moon has more seas or those lava basalt areas than the far side of the moon does. Now, V cells, you mentioned that you could see Neil Armstrong. Well, let's see here. Coming into the center of your screen, that one sea that is quite dark, that is the Sea of Tranquility. And do you see that little area that kind of looks like a mouth is coming down to eat a small little dot? That tiny little dot is Moltke crater. And just below Moltke crater and a little bit off to the right-hand side from Moltke crater, that is where Apollo 11 landed. And that is in the Sea of Tranquility. And just above and off to the right-hand side from Moltke crater is where Apollo 16 landed in those highlands there. I'm so glad you're enjoying V cells. Welcome. I am just a crazy astronomer who is, I don't have an education in any of this. I've just been looking at maps and making maps of the moon for so long that it's kind of stuck in the brain. But I'm a complete novice, just a complete novice. Try and get that moon above where the chat line is. Sorry, I'm having to yeet the moon for a little bit. There we go. And what you're actually looking through is a Dobsonian 10 telescope, and you're viewing live from Columbus, Ohio. I actually do educational pieces at John Glenn Astronomy Park on the moon on some nights. So, but I've got quite a bit of the moon mapped out on my channel. So if you'd like to know more and actually see more details about where things are on the moon, you can peruse my channel and see all the maps and stuff that I've made. I have a globe of the moon, and I hate to admit it, but my husband, he's a little bit jealous of the globe because sometimes he'll come in and he'll be like, "Dagnabbit, she's fallen asleep with the moon again." And I'm literally kicked back in my little office and I've got the moon in hand and I've actually fallen asleep making maps. Oh, cool. Thanks for subscribing. Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can help you with? Along the bottom here, you see that really long line that's a dark sea? That is the Sea of Cold, and that actually lies along the top side of the moon. Now off to the left-hand side, that's a little bit down from the center, that oval, that darkened oval that you see, that is the Sea of Crisis. And just above that is the Sea of Fertility. Off to the very left-hand side of the Sea of Fertility, there's a really large, bright white crater. That is Langrenus crater. And then just down and off to the right-hand side from the Sea of Fertility, that is the Sea of Tranquility. And just above that, that smaller sea that is in between the Sea of Fertility and the Sea of Tranquility, that one is the Sea of Nectar. Just below the Sea of Tranquility, that is the Sea of Serenity. It is the third one. See that cluster that comes down from the left-hand side? There's a cluster of 3 that are right beside the Sea of Crisis. That third one down kind of looks like, almost like it's got a point at the bottom. That is the Sea of Serenity. And just above that, that is the Sea of Vapors. Then, of course, you have the Sea of Rains or the Sea of Showers. There's a really darkened crater that's just below the Sea of Showers. It's almost like a perfect oval. That is Plato crater. And then we also have Grimaldi, which is across the Ocean of Storms and all the way over to the right-hand side. And it's that really darkened crater that's just at the very, very edge of the terminator line. And the terminator line, that is the line of demarcation of where the shadow is actually going across the face of the moon. And that line, that terminator line, is constantly moving across the face of the moon. And that terminator line moving is what gives us our phases of the moon. So when it's at the very, very edge and the rest of it is in shadow, that's what gives us a crescent. And right now we are in the waxing gibbous phase, which means that it's getting bigger and it's almost to the full moon. And it is almost a full moon. Once you get past a half moon and you're getting bigger, that is gibbous. Once you are past the half moon and getting smaller and smaller, that goes into a crescent. Now in the center of your screen, that large oval, that is the Sea of Crisis. Just above it, that weird little W that's in darker relief, that is the Sea of Waves. just beside the sea of waves and down a little bit, that little area that's kind of looks like it's ruffled, that is the sea of foam. There we go. That really bright crater that's just beside the Sea of Crisis, that is Proclus crater. Hi, Gabriel. How are you doing tonight? Or is it Gabriel? Gabriel. I think it's Gabriel. I think Gabriel is with 2 L's and an E. My apologies. There is the Sea of Tranquility off to the upper left-hand side. And now we are going just over the Sea of Vapors, which I've put into the center of the screen. If I can get this to actually work with me instead of moving. That is driving me crazy. Stop that. Work with me, Luna. There we go. At the bottom side of the Sea of Serenity, there's a really bright crater that's off to the left-hand side. That is Posidonius crater. And then there's one just at the very, very top of the Sea of Serenity from our view. That is Menelaus crater. And then the bright one just to the right-hand side of it, that is Manilius crater. Stop that. There we go. Oh, me too. I think that would be wicked cool, driving a rover on the moon. There's actually 3 that are still left on the moon, one near Apollo 15's landing site, one near Apollo 16, and one near Apollo 17's landing sites. When Neil and Buzz Aldrin were getting ready to land on the moon, they were flying over, and it was only half moon at that time. And so when they were flying over the darkened or the shadow side of the moon, they were actually flying over what is called Earthlight. And Earthlight or Earthshine is when light is reflected from the sun off of Earth and onto the moon, and it gives the moon kind of a, Neil said it looked like an ethereal blue glow to that side of the moon. I think that would be amazing to look at, actually seeing kind of a blue glow across the whole entire field of the moon as you're flying directly over it. I think that would be really beautiful to see. Now, if you're wondering what the moon smells like, apparently when Neil and Buzz Aldrin took their helmets off for the first time after they had been walking on the moon, the first thing that they smelled was what Neil and Buzz compared to as, have you ever struck a match and had that burning sulfur scent, or this same scent as like spent gunpowder? That's what the moon dust actually smelled like. And it's extremely static charged. So it literally stuck to everything. They had it all over their clothes. Apparently, when they were getting ready to step back into the LEM, after they had been on the moon, it, took back off. Eagle took back off and met back up. And once they were getting ready to get back into that vehicle in order to make the trip back home, I can't remember what his name was, but he looked at Neil and Buzz and said, "You two have to disrobe and take off all that stuff with all that moon dust. I have a clean, my whole entire cabin is completely clean. You're not bringing all that back in here." So they actually jettisoned their packs and everything where they had been walking on the moon and all that moon dust and all that statically charged stuff that they just couldn't get out of their clothes. So they jettisoned all that back into the Eagle lander when they just let it go. But isn't that just beautiful? Our moon is very clear tonight. We've got beautiful skies here in Columbus, Ohio. And if you happen to be somewhere where you can actually step out and look up at the moon tonight, there is a tiny little yellow dot that is just below the moon and off to the right-hand side, just a tiny little smidge. And that tiny little dot is actually Saturn. Oh, you're very lucky, V-Cells. My husband was just a kid when Neil and Buzz Aldrin took off and headed to the moon. So he was just a kid watching that on the news. I wasn't even born yet. I was just a figment of my parents' childhood imaginations at that time. But yeah, he actually got to watch that on TV, and I'm super jealous, super jealous. If I could go anywhere, I would want to go to the moon. I'm kind of a bit of a geek when it comes to the moon. There's the Sea of Tranquility and the Sea of Serenity. Now, in between those and at the bottom left-hand side, you'll see an area that kind of juts up, and in between those two, let's see if I can get that a little bit clearer. See that little area that's jutting up and in between the two, in between the Sea of Tranquility and the Sea of Serenity? Kind of looks like a weird ice cream cone shape. That is where Apollo 17 landed. Get Elon to send us. I think all he wants to do is put up more things up in the sky that actually obstructs my views. Now, in the center of your screen, you'll see kind of a line that kind of goes up and off to the right-hand side. And it's kind of like a real squiggly, brighter white line. Those are the Apennine Mountains. And just below those, there's a break. And then that second area of mountains that starts just below the Apennine Mountains, those are the Caucasus Mountains. Below the Caucasus Mountains, you will see two craters. They're a little bit lighter and kind of in and just above the Sea of Cold. The one just above the Sea of Cold, that is Eudoxus crater, and the one that is in the Sea of Cold, just below it, that is Aristotle's crater. And then again, that really dark one that is off to the right-hand side from those two, that is Plato crater. And just off to the right-hand side and up a little bit, kind of looks like a sea kind of laying down, or almost like a bowl. That is the Bay of Rainbows. And just off to the right-hand side of the Bay of Rainbows, those are the Jura Mountains. I wish that YouTube would actually allow me to have a way of screen locking. That drives me a little bit crazy. Wants to go in and out of focus. Stop that. But look at all the definition that you can see on the actual terminator, and that's where all the shadows are. And that is what is filling out as that terminator line moves a little bit closer and closer to the edge until we have a full moon tomorrow night. And tomorrow night will actually be a super moon, which means that it will be closer to us and it's going to be a full moon. So it's going to be really, really close. I think right now we're at close to 221,000 or 223,000 miles. I'll have to double check on that. But we are right at 98.4% or 98.5% illumination tonight. What would the highest point or mountain on the moon be, and what's the deepest hole? You know what? That is a darn good question, and I don't have that on my brain, but I will make a video about that tonight. I promise you, I certainly will. I'm taking notes on that right now. Hold that thought while I write this down. Highest point and deepest area on moon. Make video. I will make that tonight. Excellent question. Thank you. Let's back out of that just a little bit. There we go. Hold on just 1 second. Dun, 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 dun. Moon distance is currently 226,633 miles. Monshuygens. Yes. Probably not saying that correctly. The lowest area on the moon is a small crater at the bottom of Antonides crater, located within the South Pole Aitken SPA basin on the lunar far side, so we can't actually see it. The deepest point is 9.12 kilometers deep. I will make a video about that. Yeah, that's insane, isn't it? That is so beautiful. Let's see here. Let's go down. Saturn will be very tiny using the 17.3 millimeter, but let's go see Saturn for a second. You want to go see Saturn? Let's go see Saturn first. There's Saturn. Let's see if I can clear that up a little bit. There we go. Saturn's rings are almost edge on. And the reason why that is that once Saturn went around the sun, our view of it changes, our perspective of it changes due to our position and its position in the skies. So instead of us being able to see the whole disk of the rings, they become edge on. And when it was behind the sun, it actually looked like the rings completely disappeared. We couldn't get a view of that, but we have seen them edge on before. And we've got pictures of that from NASA where it looks like there's just a little dark line that goes through the center of Saturn, but otherwise the rings just completely disappear. The rings stretch out for 175,000 miles. And also an interesting tidbit about Saturn is that if we had a, hey, come back here. If we had a bathtub big enough to hold it and put it inside of water, it would float. It's actually less dense than water. So if we had a big enough bathtub to put Saturn in, it would float. Now, that movement that you are viewing is due to Earth's rotation. So as we are turning underneath the night skies, everything moves from the east to the west. That's why our moon rises in the east, sets in the west. Same for our sun, same for every star and planet in our skies. Now you're probably wondering, well, why is it going to the left-hand side? And the reason why that is because everything in my view is flipped upside down and backwards due to the type of telescope that I have. I have a Dobsonian 10 telescope, and the two mirrors that are inside my telescope actually flip and invert our view. But lovely, lovely little Saturn. Now, I've got pictures from and video from a couple of weeks ago of where Titan Moon actually moved in front of Saturn and actually cast its shadow onto the face of Saturn. So you can actually see Titan Moon off to the upper left-hand side, and then you can actually see the shadow that's actually on the planet of Saturn. And I took video of that when that happened. That was a really nice view down at John Glenn Astronomy Park. I caught it once at John Glenn and actually once from here in my backyard. Lovely, lovely little Saturn. Now, Jupiter does not rise until really early in the morning. So I won't have views of any of the other planets or anything until really, really early in the morning. While everybody else is asleep, my dumb self is out here catching views at crazy nights, crazy hours. It's trying to get it just to be a little bit bigger, but that 17.3 lens is just not gonna let me do it. This is so true. And I'll tell you a story. One of my little neighbors, she can't be more than 3 years old. And like a year and a half ago was the first time that I actually met her. She's the cutest little thing in the world. And I set her up on top of my dad's chair, this old creaky thing that you hear in the background. And she stood on that little chair and she looked at Saturn for the first time, and her eyes got as big as saucers, and she looked at me and she just was amazed that she was seeing Saturn through a telescope so clearly. And those are the moments, that wide-eyed wonder that you get with these kids and with even with adults. It's magical. It's beautiful. Those are moments that you can't buy. This is the only telescope that I have. I bought this in 2023, August of 2023. And so everything that is on my page, all the information that I have, that is everything that I have learned since August of 2023. I knew hardly anything about the moon except for the fact that it was there. So a lot of the information that is on my webpage is brand new to me as well. So I'm kind of learning right along with you guys. Well, V-Cells, it has been a pleasure tonight. I am going to jump off of here and grab some really crystal clear views and pull up a video and make something for in the morning. But it has been a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful evening and that you have a productive day tomorrow. Take care of yourself. And as always, this is Dobbs reminding you to keep looking up and always asking questions.